guys and girls, I hope this video finds you well and you're all keeping safe. On this video I'm going to be doing an Oldham horror movie review, and I'm going to be talking about the trashy film The Children from 1980, so not to be confused with the more recent Children, which came out about 10 years ago now. Quite a different film, I think it's probably fair to say, although a similar premise, I guess. And this is one of those sort of like, I guess sort of slightly forgotten, but it's sort of film that I think you hear as a bit of a trashy cult sort of favourite for a certain group of people, and it's from the Troma stable, which always sort of a mark of well, something anyway when it comes to B movie trash. Obviously one of the big movies from that label or staple, whichever term you want to use, is Class of Nuke 'Em High, which is a classic, folks. If you enjoy that sort of movie, then I think that's sort of top end entertainment, really. But yeah, they're films that are known for being very low budget, very kind of gross, notable for their sort of bad like taste, bad humour, and for being extremely cheesy. A lot of like cheesy dialogue, a lot of very low budget, so the effects tend to be quite sort of scrungy looking, and the shooting style is very sort of amateurish, but I think in a way where you can have a bit of fun with it. So yeah, this comes from Troma Entertainment as well. I do love like the balls of Troma actually putting the word entertainment after their name. So yeah, as I said, The Children from 1980. And I'm going to go into spoilers pretty early in this review because it is a simple premise and there's not a lot you can talk about without like talking about particular scenes. But it is that age-old kind of classic of children in a small town. Something mysterious happens to them and they turn evil. And we're going to talk about exactly what they do and what turns them evil and what exactly they are. But in this case, we start off with like the local power plant, and you've got two typically like sort of lame brain sort of workers who leave the power plant alone. That they go for their lunch break, and it's kind of telegraphed from that moment that the camera pans beyond the gates of like the power plant. And I do enjoy the title of the power plant. It's Yankee Power Co, which I do like. That's such a typical American sort of southern town type expression, Yankee. But I do enjoy that. And then the camera, as I said, sort of drifts like just into like this power plant and through the walls and just further, and as it goes along, like you just see the chemicals and the steam, and it all gets very sort of down and dirty and quite grimy, and in quite a fun way. It's really signposting then this is where the threat is going to be. So depending on how much credit I guess you want to give like the makers of this film, you could say it is making a little bit of a political statement about the damages of power plants potentially. But in this case, I think it is just like, it's just a way to get you into the story. I don't think they were going for anything that deep, and it's probably all the better for it. But so we see like some sort of gate or something has been left open, and like the steam and that escapes and drifts through the air. And the next thing we see, it cuts to like this school bus with all these like school children, and they're all very merry and singing along. And the next thing you know, they're affected by the by the steam, by the funk from the local power plant, and that's when they all turn evil. And I think they kill the driver, or the bus crashes anyway, so that sort of disposes of him. So then, as far as like the residents are concerned, they obviously, it's not till quite far into the film where they start learning exactly what's going on, and that's when these children have been possessed, and they're turned evil, and they can kill people. They go around starting to kill people, and that's the premise. And it's kind of playing on that classic trope, the innocent nature of children being used for something a little more twisted, and that's kind of how like the parents are sort of fooled, and and that's the basic premise. And what it leads to is that we actually get zombie children. So it's another like twist on the zombie genre, if you like, but this time with children, which might be the first time I've seen a film with zombie children in, actually. I'm not sure. I would have to think. It's the first one I can remember where they're actually all, they're all zombie children. Obviously, there might have been other films where you might have a family where they're turned into zombies. I'm not sure. You can let me know in the comments if you can think of another one where it's just children, but it's kind of just how bonkers this film is. The fact that this power plant apparently can turn them into zombie. There's sort of no explanation for that. It's like, well, what's in this power plant? What's in the chemicals that can make the children turn into zombies? But it's all good fun. It's nicely handled. I like the whole thing about the families not knowing where their children are, and what's happened to them, and them being quite naive about when they see them, because they're obviously relieved, and they appear to be okay to them, and they think, great, we've got our children back, and that's when they put the kibosh on them, let's say. So it's an entertaining premise, and it's solid fun throughout. I think there's some really cheesy, entertaining characters. I do like. I mean, one thing I thought early on, because we see the mother of one of like the missing children. She's like semi-naked, like she's sort of sunbathing. But to me, it didn't really look that sort of hot. But whatever, it looked pretty downcast to me, I have to say. And it seemed to become a regular theme, because another one of the characters later on seemed to be like just stretching out and sunbathing. But yeah, another thing is like her daughter was. At first, I thought it was like this really bad, like sort of parent, like this middle class type parent who was just discarding her daughter because she wanted to keep her inside, and she said take your drugs. But I think later on it became clear that she did have some sort of a condition. So that's sort of fair enough. But yeah, at first it did come across like this is just a really bad mother, and she's just like controlling her daughter. And it's a shame, actually, because at one point it looked like the daughter might become a big character. She might become a final girl type. It did set her up, or at least I thought it might be going that way, because she was a character who was quite sympathetic, and she seemed to be potentially like she could be like a final survivor. But unfortunately, they didn't go that way. That they do actually kill her. And her death scene actually is pretty like hilarious in a ridiculous way, because you've got her brother who's like obviously zombified, and he's just like killed the mother, and the daughter's unaware, so she keeps like looking around where for the mother, and she goes outside, and And this kid, he's just like moving so slowly. He's got the whole eyes sort of like glazed over, but he's walking so slowly. Then you think, well, how is he ever going to catch her? And it just makes it look so cheap. But then it's the kill happens off camera because he eventually gets her like inside the barn or something where she's looking for the mother, and you hear the scream. And that happens a couple times actually, because I guess this is super low budget, so it makes sense. And a lot of the like scenes happen, a lot of the kills happen off camera, but there are some fun kills actually. I think I do like the whole sort of idea of the parents obviously seeing their children and being suckered in, and they actually hug them to death. They literally hug them to death, which is absolutely brilliant. So beware of the hugs when your children are possessed, folks. It's an important message for our times, maybe, because actually there is a funny like connection to what we're currently going through with the lockdown, because actually once things start becoming clear what's going on, there is a lockdown in this small town. Because there's this funny scene with this snooty sort of out of towner who's meant to be like, I think, like more rich and like arty. And I think he's a good example of the sort of movie we're dealing with here, where they sort of, it doesn't look like someone who's like that rich or upper class or that into art at all. It just looks like an extra who they've stuck some like quite fancy sort of clothes on. It's the sort of character you see in this sort of film. He really doesn't look very convincing, but he's like coming into town, and they're kind of saying, sorry, we have to shut down town because there's no, we have to like separate like the residents from other people coming in. And yeah, that did ring doorbells in me. I thought, oh my god, yeah, that is pretty similar to the sort of thing we're going through, I guess, at the moment. But yeah, as I was saying before, I did enjoy the whole hugging them to death thing, and just like the effects, sort of the cheap practical effects, where it was them crumbling to dust sort of thing. And there was some fun, as I said, just very low budget, scrungy effects, just kind of gross out, very sort of slimy type. But those kills I did enjoy. And yeah, it did have some fun with that whole idea of possessed children and this innocent sort of thing, but twisting it around. So that's all. There's some like really entertaining, cheesy characters around town. So you have like this a couple of examples. You have this character of Molly, who's like, I think it's kind of a trope in this type of movie, or even other movies, where she's kind of this feisty old woman who works in like a convenience store, and she's just a character onto herself, where she's like up for anything almost. So she's got a gun waiting, and obviously she has some great lines, and yeah, it's like lots of stuff like she's kind of saying that, you know, keep your pants zipped sort of thing, where when the sheriff's like knocking on the door, and it's like he's being a bit impatient. So it's almost becomes this sexual sort of line, keep your pants zipped, instead of just, yeah, keep your pants on. And at one point she kind of says, so it's something like, if they harm a hair on those children's heads, I'll just like, I think, break their asses or something, or anyone, yeah, tries to harm them here, I'll blast their ass. That's it. Like, I'll blast their asses, which I absolutely love. Go, Molly. she's sort of delightful. But actually, I should talk a bit more about like the children and the whole deaths, because there's actually a really great scene with Molly, which I quite like, which is a fun sort of like sort of playing with the whole thing, because earlier in the film there's a scene where one of the characters finds the children, and that becomes a whole thing where it's like, oh, I found the children, and next thing they know they're dead. And they play with this in the Molly scene, because she's alone on her own in like the shop, and because her husband's, I think, like a local sheriff or a police guy anyway, and works with them. So he's gone off to look for them. But suddenly the children appear in front of the shop, and Molly sees them through like the window, and she like calls the sheriff on like the radio in the car, and she's like, "Sheriff, I found the children." And obviously at this point they know that the children are like killing people, so you just get like this long shot of the car just pausing as he hears those words, and then you sort of hear Molly being killed over the radio. So I enjoy that, a playful bit of him playing with that. And yeah, you just have some really good trashy fun with the children and their evil faces, and yeah, I like them. The whole thing where they say "mummy" and they hug them, kills them, and then "daddy." You could go through the whole family, really. There's another quite funny, like douchey sort of character. This character of Billy, who's like just one of the other like police guys, and or Harry, sorry, and he's one of these like really typically 80s sort of douchey type characters, where he's for starters he's like seeing the local girl, like one of like she's like, I think at most she's like 18, 19, something like that. And I mean, he's probably quite young. He's maybe 22. But even so, even if he was that young, I think she looked like she could have passed for 18, I'll say that, but she easily could have been younger. So he's having a thing with her anyway, which is taking his eye off the game, sort of thing. And it's funny because later on he's talking to like these local residents, like these sort of classic stereotypical hillbilly type characters. They're all like drunk, and they're sort of more sleazy than him. They're kind of giving him like shit and just being sleazy about the whole thing with him and the cow. And what's sort of hilarious about that scene is that the sheriff then calls him on the radio and says, "Billy, or Harry, sorry, have you seen anything?" And at this point they can't find them, and they're sort of, they think, you know, they might have, because they found the bus earlier and that, so they figured then they must have like slipped past like the barricade sort of thing. And it's like he's been doing other stuff. He's like been off with the girl. He's now been talking to like these drunken idiots, and Harry's just like, no, I haven't seen a thing. And he actually has a line where he says, "Well, I can't see how those children could have got past like me and you without seeing anything." And then he actually leaves them, because he gets called away. He actually leaves like the drunken hillbillies to actually watch like that area, that facility. It's like, oh yeah, these are the guys you want to leave in charge. Yeah, good move, Harry. You're such a pro. But yeah, there's some really like cheesy, trippy 80s sort of like music. There's this hilarious like synth number at some point where it becomes like a chase sort of thing, and yeah, it's almost like this very like ridiculous and over the top synth funk type theme that is so trashy. But again, I sort of enjoyed it in quite a bad kind of way. So there's some solid kills, I think, and it all builds to like this ending where it's basically the three characters against the children. So you've got the sheriff, because Harry gets killed. He says, "I found the children," and the next thing he knows, he's dead. So you've got the sheriff, you've got this other character, and then you've got his pregnant wife, who's pregnant, and so they're like barricaded up in this house, and at this point they've obviously figured out what's going on, and they decide they have to do something, and this is the stage of the film where you're sort of wondering, are they going to find a way to like reverse things? Are they going to figure out a way to not kill the children, basically? But if they're not, and they have to kill the children, then this movie is kind of going to some dark places, and you sort of always figure they're going to reverse it somehow, or maybe the children will just win out, because in an odd sort of way, it's actually a bit darker if the children are the ones killed, even though they've been taken over and they're zombie children. But anyway, it does go that way, that they end up sort of killing the children. And there's a hilarious scene on the stairs, actually, where the sheriff goes all like samurai on us. He gets a samurai sword out, and he just goes for one of the children as they're like heading down the stairs. And this child, I swear, she must be like Superman, because she literally flies off the staircase out of the way. It's hilarious. It's brilliant. Because literally, he obviously must have missed it, and she must have been like jumping out the way. Either her or him, I can't remember actually whether it was boy or girl, but must have been jumping out the way to avoid the sword, but literally flies across the room like Superman. And at one stage, the woman is like sort of idiotic, because she doesn't want to harm the kids, even though she knows then they're zombies at this point, and you have to do something. So she actually smashes the sheriff over the head with like some sort of like ornament, an urn or something, to stop him from shooting at them. It's like, you stupid bitch. But yeah, it comes down to this thing where they actually invent a new rule, because it's not something I've heard of from zombie like sort of law, where they actually chop off one of their hands and they actually die. So they figure out that's how you do it. You chop off their hands. So you get this big standoff in like the barn, and the sheriff's there and the other guy's there. And I guess one of the things that lets the film down is the fact that these scenes do happen in the barn. Or you do get scenes like that where a lot of the actual action takes place off camera, and they probably do that once or twice too often, and it does cheapen it a bit. It telegraphs the facts, and then they didn't really have the budget sometimes. But yeah, you get quite a nice little scene in the barn where it's a standoff, and where eventually, because the other guy has been wrestling with should I do this, it becomes this sort of small like story for him where he eventually has to confront it, and it's almost because the sheriff ultimately gets killed, he becomes like the hero of the piece, and he does it. And again, it's off camera, it's in the barn. But yeah, again, some hilarious stuff at the end, because the sheriff is killed and he's with him on the cop car, and he just spends the night there, because then it goes to the next morning, and it's like, why didn't you go inside, you idiot? Why didn't you check on your wife? I think, and it's meant to be symbolic. It's kind of like almost like them kind of bonding, and him just being there for the sheriff, who was sort of slowly dying, but whatever. But then there's they sort of play the audience, and I kind of guessed the way this was going. So he hears like his wife shouting out in pain, and basically they're making you think that she's in danger, but she's not. She's pregnant and she's about to have the baby, and it gets delivered, and I think you can all guess the twist which is coming, and that is that the baby is one of the possessed. He's possessed, basically. He's an evil baby. That's the final shot of this movie. It's like so ridiculous because basically he has black fingernails, and it cuts to that shot. Cuts. You hear her screaming. Cut to black. So an entertaining but silly ending to the film. But yeah, and I'm pretty sure, although we didn't see it, he took a bite at her in her breast. I'm pretty sure that's what happened, even though we didn't see it. But I do enjoy that last shot. It's pretty good fun. So that's The Children. Nice little twist at the end there, and it's solid enough fun, folks. It's not amazing or anything, and there's better example of classic trash movie. Class of Nukem High. I point you to that once again, but this is solidly good fun. I would definitely watch this again for sure. So there you have it. That's The Children, and rating wise, I'll give it a 5.5 out of 10. I think it is entertaining enough in what it's doing to make it a solid enough watch. So it's definitely not on the terrible side. It definitely fits into the kind of so bad it's good sort of thing. So pretty good fun in my opinion. But you can disagree if you want. If you've seen the film, then let me know your thoughts in the comments below. There will be more horror movie reviews coming soon. Another franchise I thought I would do for the channel, because of course I've got franchises on the go. Halloween, for example, you can find the first 4 Halloween reviews on the channel too. The Chucky movies as well, I've done the first couple of those. But another franchise I thought I'd do is the Final Destination films, actually, so you can maybe expect the first one of those soon. But thanks for listening to the video, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.